Ratskins. The Ratskins were here before anyone else. Long before the hive spires went up, before House Helmar claimed the planet, the Ratskin tribes were already living in the tunnels below, and they have never left. They do not worship the Emperor. They worship the Underhive itself, a living god that feeds them when it is generous and kills them when it is not. Outsiders call them primitive. That is a mistake. A Ratskin brave can track a target through a chem mist tunnel using nothing but smell and vibration, and their shamans read the future in the smoke of burning wiregrass. They fight with bows, knives, and totem magic in a world of laser guns and autoguns, and somehow they are still here, generation after generation, while entire houses have risen and collapsed around them. Their warbands are led by Ratskin leaders, backed by totem warriors, who carry the spirit markings of their tribe into every fight, a structure that has barely changed in millennia. They keep almost no contact with hive society by choice, treating the constant feuding of the houses above them as the business of people who desecrate a home the Ratskins have always considered sacred. They do not fight for territory, they fight because the Underhive is theirs and everyone else is just passing through. Scavies. Every hive city creates its own outcasts, and the Scavies are what happens when the mutation cannot be hidden anymore. In the Underhive, a stray gene or a bad batch of recise water can twist a person's body into something the houses will not tolerate near their children. So they are cast out, left to rot in the deepest, most toxic reaches of the hive, where the air itself is a slow poison. But here's the twist. That poison made them stronger. Scavies eat what nobody else will touch, drink what would kill a normal hiver, and somehow keep coming back. Their gangs are led by Scavy bosses, hardened survivors who command packs of the mutated and the desperate. Alongside Scalies, hivers whose mutations have pushed them halfway towards something reptilian, and the truly far gone plague zombies, barely human anymore, driven by hunger alone. They raid Gilder caravans and isolated outposts, not for glory, but because starvation does not negotiate. Every credit they steal is worthless without a Gilder willing to honor it, which means even the most desperate Scavy raid still has to end with someone, somewhere, quietly laundering the loot back into the very trade network that cast them out in the first place. Hit the like and subscribe button to see more videos like this. Leave a comment on your favorite Necromunda faction. Let's get back into the video. Redemptionists. Cawdor's official religion has an army of its own, and it does not answer to anyone but its own conscience. The Cult of Redemption believes mankind has fallen, that filth and depravity have poisoned the species, and that only fire and faith can burn the corruption out. That is not a metaphor. Redemptionist gangs march into battle carrying actual flamers, actual Prometheum tanks, actual torches, because purification by fire is the literal central act of their faith. A Redemptor priest does not lead by charisma. He leads because he claims a direct line to the Emperor's will, and his deacons, his brothers, and his fanatical zealots follow him into certain death without hesitation, because dying for the cause is the fastest path to redemption. Even the newest recruits, the novices, are drilled to see martyrdom as promotion, not tragedy. Here's where it gets interesting. Most houses treat the cult as an occasional nuisance, a fringe group of fanatics to be tolerated. But inside House Cawdor, the cult is not fringe. It is the government. Every Cawdor ganger answers, one way or another, to the redemption. That single fact makes House Cawdor the most ideologically unified force in the entire Underhive. Slave Ogryns. For generations, Ogryns on Necromunda were not people. They were property, servitors bought and sold by the Merchants Guild, their augmentic collars and forced labor rigs stripping away anything resembling free will. They dug tunnels, they hauled ore, they died in the dark, and nobody wrote their names down. And then, in some of the deepest sumps of the hive, that started to change. A handful of Ogryns broke their mental shackles. Not through rebellion in the traditional sense, but through sheer, brute persistence, grinding against their own conditioning until it cracked. What emerged was something the Merchants Guild never planned for. Slave Ogryn gangs, built from creatures the hive spent centuries dismissing as mindless muscle, now armed, organized, and furious. Their strength was never in question. What changed was the will behind it. A slave Ogryn does not fight because it was ordered to anymore. It fights because for the first time, it gets to choose. Ironhead Squat Prospectors. 10,000 years ago, 12 squat clans from the Confederation of Erlish arrived on Necromunda to help rebuild a world shattered by the Horus Heresy. They never left. Nobody today knows exactly how many squats live on the planet because most of them are not in the hive cities at all. They are out in the ash wastes, riding enormous crawling land trains that function as entire mobile settlements, digging up whatever the 10,000 years of industry above ground has buried and forgotten. Here's the contrast worth noting. Where hivers see the ash wastes as a death sentence, the Ironhead clans see a resource. They strip old battlefields, dead vehicles, and collapse structures for salvage worth more than most hivers will earn in a lifetime. Their prospectors wear massive, pressurized power armor built for a world that is actively trying to kill them, and they guard their dig sites the way houses guard their territory, because out in the wastes, a good find is worth defending to the death. Their oldest and deepest excavations, the ones that tap into forgotten pre-heresy ruins, are treated as sacred ground, halls of the ancients that no outsider is ever allowed to see. Waste Nomads. Long before Necromunda, it was called Arrhenius, and its rulers were cast down when the Imperium arrived. Some say the last citizens of that fallen empire fled into the wastes rather than submit, and that the Waste Nomads carry their blood today, twisted by generations on a surface that should not support human life at all. Whether or not the legend is literally true, one thing is not in doubt. These are not refugees clinging to survival. They are the toughest people on the planet. Wrapped in rebreathers and layered cloaks against toxic dust storms and radiation that would kill an unprotected hiver in hours, nomad clans travel the wastes in vehicle convoys, raiding settlements and vanishing before enforcers can respond. They carry an old, deep hatred for House Helmaor, the family that claims ownership of a surface the nomads consider theirs by right of survival. And here is the detail that separates them from every other gang on this list. Nomad clans refuse to fight from vehicles the way Ash Wastes raiders normally do. They ride in on beasts and on foot, armed with web pistols and electrostatic impulse emitters built specifically to cripple enemy trucks before a fight even starts, betting on skill over horsepower in a landscape built for machines. The Hive calls them savages. The Wastes call them the only ones who actually belong there. Spirers. Above the poison clouds, above the hive spires, above everything the Underhive gangs will ever see, live the Spire nobles, families like Ulanti, Tai, Griam, Kairon, and Helmaor itself, in clean air most Necromundans will never breathe. And once in their lives, the young scions of those families are sent down. Not for punishment. For proof. It is a rite of passage. Survive the Underhive or kill a quota of its inhabitants, and earn the right to inherit real power. They do not go down unarmed. Spirer aspirants wear hunting rigs, powered suits engineered for exactly one purpose, and each rig is a completely different weapon. The Yeld flies on razored wings and carries heavy laser gauntlets. The Orus is a walking demolition machine of piston fists and bolt launchers. The Malkadon climbs sheer walls on spines and web filament to ambush from above. The Jakara trades armor for blistering speed. A gang of hivers has never seen anything like it, and that is exactly the point. To the Underhive, Spirers are not gang rivals. They are an alien intrusion from a world above the clouds hunting for sport, and when the hunt ends, win or lose, the rig comes off, and the aspirant returns to a life of luxury the people they just killed could never have imagined. Corpse Grinder Cults. Every hive city on Necromunda runs on corpse starch, a grim necessity where the dead are rendered down to feed the living. It is horrifying, but it is normal, run by the Corpse Guild as just another industry. Until, in certain grinding houses, something snapped. Workers who spent years processing bodies started to lose themselves in the work, and somewhere along the way they discovered they preferred the taste of something fresher than starch. What began as isolated madness became devotion, because these are not simply cannibals. They are a Khornate cult, worshippers of the chaos god of blood and rage, their bodies transformed by forbidden flesh into hulking, muscle-bound killers. And here's the detail that should chill you. Lord Helmaor knows about them. His enforcers actively erase evidence of corpse grinder activity from Imperial record, because acknowledging a live chaos cult inside his hive would invite attention from forces far more dangerous than gangers with cleavers. Their fighters carry the tools of their old trade turned into weapons, chain cleavers, and rotary flensing saws that once processed the dead and now do the same job to the living. The cover-up is bigger than the cult itself. Chaos Helot Cults. Helots are the invisible workforce of Necromunda, the laborers who spend their entire lives on the worst jobs the hive has, with nothing waiting for them at the end but death and a corpse starch vat. No dignity, no rest, no hope of anything better. So when someone offers them freedom, even a false poison version of it, people listen. In hidden chambers and forgotten maintenance tunnels, Helot congregations meet in secret, filing stolen machine parts into the 8-pointed star of the ruinous powers and conducting rituals no enforcer patrol is meant to find. This is not random blasphemy, it is organized despair, weaponized. Each cult forms around whichever chaos god speaks most directly to its members' suffering, rage for the beaten, plague for the poisoned, change for the desperate. The tragedy is that most of these people were never evil to begin with. They were simply worked to the edge of humanity by the very houses that now hunt them down for what they became. By the time enforcers raid one of their shrines, the workers responsible are usually long gone, already whispering the same offer to the next grinding house down the line. Venators. Not every gang on Necromunda serves a house, and not every fighter needs one. Venators, named for the old High Gothic word for a hunting party, are loose, temporary bands of bounty hunters who form up for one job and dissolve when the coin runs out. Their ranks are a mixed bag of ex-military deserters, disgraced former house gangers, and professional killers who never belonged to anyone in the first place. What unites them is not loyalty, it is the bounty board. Some Venator bands operate close enough to being death cults that other gangs give them a wide berth, and the only reason the houses tolerate them at all is that their skills are useful. A house that will not send its own gangers into a trap will happily pay a Venator band to walk into it instead. Here is the exception worth noting. Loyalty in the Underhive usually runs along blood and house lines. Venators prove that on Necromunda, everything, including violence itself, can be bought. A house that wants a rival gang leader gone without the political fallout of open war simply posts a bounty and looks the other way while a Venator band collects it. It is a useful arrangement for everyone at the top, because open war between two houses only ever benefits the 4 houses that stayed out of it, and a hired Venator band lets a house strike hard without technically starting anything. Palanite Enforcers. Somebody has to keep order in a hive city built on gang warfare, chem addiction, and chaos infiltration, and that somebody is the Palanite Enforcers. They are Lord Helmower's personal instrument, the visible fist of House Helmower's authority, recruited from the general population and put through training brutal enough to break most applicants before they ever see the field. Here's the part people get wrong. Enforcers are not there to protect ordinary hivers. That was never the job. Their real function is maintaining the Pax Helmower, the fragile piece that keeps enough goods moving and enough taxes flowing that Lord Helmower's rule stays profitable. Lord Helmower does not personally run 6 warring houses. He lets the Merchants Guild bind them together through trade licenses, shipping rights, and tax concessions that every house needs and only he can grant. And the enforcers exist to make sure nobody ever gets ambitious enough to break that arrangement by force. If that means an entire settlement gets leveled to stop a riot, so be it. If that means covering up a corpse grinder cult to avoid imperial scrutiny, so be it. Enforcers carry the best standard issue gear in the Underhive: shock batons, suppression shields, dogs bred for manhunting, and they use it without hesitation, because in Hive Primus, order and justice have never actually been the same thing. Their command structure runs from street sergeants up through captains, and above them, proctors who never set foot in the Underhive at all, running entire precinct fortresses from behind fortified walls while the officers under them do the actual bleeding. Out past the reach of those fortresses, in the lawless bad zones where even Palanite authority barely holds, a separate breed takes over: bad zone enforcers, armored, mobile, and built for a version of the job with even less pretense of due process. House Cawdor. House Cawdor is the largest house on Necromunda and the poorest, and those two facts are not a coincidence. Cawdor territory sits in the oldest, most decayed sectors of the hive, scavenged rather than manufactured, patched together rather than built, but numbers are power on their own, and Cawdor has more bodies than any other house by a wide margin. What truly defines them, though, is faith. The cult of redemption is not just tolerated in Cawdor territory, it is the official religion, uniquely so among all 6 houses, meaning House Cawdor is not merely religious, it is functionally run by its priesthood. Every Cawdor ganger marches under the same banner of purification by fire, the same belief that mankind's sins must be burned away. That gives them something the wealthier houses lack: total unity of purpose. A Cawdor gang does not fight only for territory or profit. It fights because its priest told it this is holy work, and a soldier who believes he is already saved is very hard to frighten. Ordinary gangers carry the title of brothers. Their juves are novices working toward full standing, and it is Cawdor's deacons who serve as the enforcers of doctrine inside the gang itself, making sure faith never slips into doubt. It is also, by most accounts, the poorest house of all 6, its territory stitched together from the oldest, most crumbling sectors of the hive, which only sharpens the appeal of a faith that promises the meek will be the ones who inherit the ash. House Delaque. House Delaque runs the shadows, and everyone hates them for it. Where Goliath sells muscle and Saar sells technology, Delaque sells something far more dangerous: information. And in a hive city built on secrets, information is currency nobody can live without. Delaque agents are widely considered among the deadliest assassins in the Underhive, trained to move unseen through territory that belongs to someone else. Their gangs favor silenced weapons, chem mass, and psychic sensitivity over raw firepower because a Delaque killer does not want a fair fight. He wants the target dead before anyone knows he was in the room. Here is the reversal worth sitting with. Every house needs Delaque eventually. Rivals need to know what the enemy is planning. Even Lord Helmauer's own agents quietly deal with them. Because in a hive city where the Merchants Guild controls every legal transaction, the only market Delaque has ever needed to corner is the one for secrets nobody is supposed to have. But nobody trusts them, and nobody invites them to stay longer than the transaction requires. House Delaque has built an empire out of being indispensable and despised at exactly the same time. Their gang leaders, the Masters of Shadow, communicate with their lieutenants, the Phantoms, through psychoteric whispers, a silent, almost telepathic link that lets a Delaque crew coordinate an ambush without a single word spoken aloud. House Saar, no house on Necromunda fights with better weapons than Saar. And the reason traces back to a piece of technology nobody else on the planet has: an ancient standard template construct database, a fragment of lost Imperial knowledge from before the Dark Age of technology collapsed. It gives Saar gangers energy weapons, advanced armor, and equipment that would be classified as relic grade anywhere else in the Underhive. But here is the twist that makes them tragic instead of simply dominant. The STC they rely on is flawed. Using it slowly irradiates everyone who touches its output, meaning Saar fighters live with radiation sickness baked into their bloodline, shortened lifespans passed down almost like an inheritance. They are the most technologically superior house on the planet, and every single one of them is dying slightly faster because of the very thing that makes them powerful. Saar territory looks like clean rooms and gleaming machinery. Underneath, it runs on a slow, silent poison nobody talks about openly. Their augments, part engineer and part marksman, keep the fragile tech running in the field, while independent tech hunters range out into the waste hunting for even older, even more dangerous archaeotech to bring home. House Orlock. House Orlock is the backbone of hive primus, miners, road warriors, and frontier fighters who keep the hive's industry moving through sheer stubborn competence. They are not flashy, they do not have Saar's technology or Escher's chemicals. What they have is versatility. Orlock fighters can hold their own at any range, with any weapon, in any fight, which is exactly what you want from a house whose job is showing up wherever the hive needs muscle and problem solving in the same package. Here is a detail most outsiders miss. Of all 6 houses, Orlock has the best relationship with the all-female House Escher, and it is not an accident. Orlock culture traditionally treats its women with real respect, a rarity in a hive city otherwise built on brutal hierarchies. That single cultural choice has bought Orlock decades of trade and goodwill that money alone could never have purchased. Their young hotheads, known as wreckers, strap on jump boosters and throw themselves into danger headfirst, causing nearly as much damage to themselves as to the enemy, a fitting symbol for a house that solves problems by charging straight at them. In a hive city where every house is constantly maneuvering against every other house, House Orlock has quietly built the closest thing Necromunda has to a genuine alliance, House Escher. House Escher controls the Underhive's chem trade, and that single fact makes them essential to every other house on the planet, whether those houses like it or not. Beyond the poisons and the stims, Escher territory is also where the Underhive goes looking for something rarer, exotic beasts captured and bred for sale, living proof that the house's expertise in chemistry extends to keeping dangerous things alive as easily as it does to killing. A genetic defect within the Escher bloodline means the house is almost entirely female, and rather than treat that as a weakness, Escher built an entire culture around it, matriarchal, sharp-tongued, and openly contemptuous of the brute force masculinity other houses treat as strength. Their fighters do not win by outmuscling opponents. They win with speed, agility, venom-tipped blades, and a battlefield full of toxins engineered in their own labs, every ganger fast enough to be gone before a slower opponent even registers she was ever there. Here is the detail that ties the whole Underhive economy together. House Goliath needs Escher stims to achieve the bulk that defines them as a house. Without Escher's chemicals, Goliath's entire identity collapses. That gives Escher a kind of leverage no amount of muscle can threaten, because on Necromunda, the deadliest weapon in the Underhive was never the biggest gun. It was always the smallest vial. House Goliath. If House Escher is the Underhive's mind and chemistry, House Goliath is its brute, undeniable body, and the entire hive economy depends on that muscle more than most people admit. Goliath runs the forges that convert raw ore into usable material, brutal, dangerous work that demands fighters who do not flinch from physical punishment. And it is that manufactured output, tools, plating, raw components, that Goliath trades out to every other house on the planet, giving them leverage that has nothing to do with muscle at all. Every Goliath ganger is built like a walking wall, augmented and stimmed until ordinary human limits no longer apply, and at the extreme end of that process stand the stimmers, fighters who have pushed the chemical enhancement so far they exist almost purely as melee weapons, built to close distance and end a fight with their fists before the enemy can even bring a gun to bear. Here is the part that gets overlooked. That size is not natural. It runs entirely on Escher stims, meaning House Goliath's entire identity, the thing that makes them who they are, comes from a trade relationship with a house they culturally look down on. Goliath's toughness is real. Their reputation for settling disputes with fists instead of words is real. But underneath the raw power sits a quiet dependency nobody in Goliath territory likes to acknowledge, because a Goliath without Escher chemicals is just a very large, very ordinary human being. Genestealer Cults. Every faction on this list is a product of Necromunda, born from its houses, its poison, its poverty, its faith. The Genestealer Cults are not. They came from somewhere else entirely, and that is what makes them the most dangerous secret in the Underhive. It begins with a single creature, a Genestealer, whose alien genome does not simply infect its victims, it rewrites their loyalty at a genetic level. The firstborn children of an infected host are hybrids, and as those hybrids breed further into the population, later generations edge closer and closer back to the original pure strain form. At the top of the structure sits the patriarch, once a single Genestealer, now grown into something monstrous, worshipped as a father and a god by every broodbrother beneath it. Here's the part that should genuinely unsettle you. Magooses, psychically gifted hybrids, are specifically tasked with infiltrating a world's own government and military command, quietly converting the very institutions meant to protect it. Primuses organize the eventual uprising in secret, coordinating an army that lives inside the population it plans to overthrow, while aberrants, hulking mutant enforcers bred deep within the cult's hidden strongholds, wait underground for the moment they are finally needed in the open. This is not a gang fighting for territory. This is a slow-motion invasion wearing human faces, spreading through Necromunda's underhive for generations before the day of ascension, the moment the cult finally stops hiding and strikes. By the time anyone on the surface realizes what has been living beneath them, it is already far too late. And Necromunda's own sourcebooks make it explicit that Genestealer Cults, alongside the Corpse Grinder and Chaos Helot Cults, are cataloged together as the hidden cults of the Underhive. The threats Lord Helmauer spends the most effort pretending do not exist. Which faction do you find the most fascinating? Drop it in the comments.